Welcome back to Move with Joe. In today's lesson, we are going to be working with integrating movement up and through the spine. This lesson is geared towards people that are having difficulty with low back discomfort. Maybe you're waking up in the morning with a lot of back tension, or after a long day of work, you've been sitting for many hours and your back's just killing you. This will be an easy, simple movement routine that you can use to free up the low back, decrease tension, and get yourself more organized so the movement is transferred up and through your spine versus having any type of shearing across the spine. So before we start the lesson, let's have you do a quick reference movement. I'll have you just slowly begin to turn to look over your right shoulder and then turn to look over your left shoulder. And notice which direction is easier for you. You can go back and forth a couple times. You want to move slowly enough that you can discern differences between the left and the right. If you move really quickly, it's really hard to pay attention to how you organize. But if you move slowly enough, you'll begin to notice that there's a difference in how you're shifting weight in your feet, how much of your pelvis moves, what's the cascade of movement, where the movement's being driven from. Do you go from your hips up? Do you go from your eyes down? So you can begin to become aware of how you organize yourself, because I guarantee you, you're not doing it exactly the same to the right and to the left. All right, so once you have that baseline, we'll have you come to lie on your back to begin the lesson. We'll begin the lesson on our back. Take a moment to notice how the floor comes up to support you. In particular, you can notice which shoulder presses into the floor more. Which side of your pelvis has more weight pushing down into the floor or pressing into the floor? You can notice the shape of your spine. So for a moment, bring your attention into your sacrum, your tailbone, and just notice what part of the sacrum is touching the floor. If your pelvis is rolled forward, you're going to be more towards the bottom end. And if you have more of a tuck of your tail, you'll be closer towards the top, along the iliac crest of the back. And you can notice the curvature in your low back. If you'd like, you can slide one hand behind the small of your back. And just notice the space between the lumbar vertebra and maybe some of the thoracic vertebra in the floor. So you can create a mental image of the lumbar spine and bring that up through the thoracic spine. There's 12 vertebrae in the thoracic spine. Each one is attached to the rib cage, 12 thoracic ribs. And then trace it up into the cervical spine. And again, here you may notice that there's a fair amount of the cervical spine that isn't touching the floor. So if you'd like, you can again trace from the base of your skull down to where your rib cage begins and just get a sense of that arc. And if you'd like, begin to turn your head just to the left, just to the point where you come to the first resistance. It's not how far you can push yourself, but just notice what's the first point of resistance that you come to. And then you can do the same thing to the right. And then when you're ready, flip on over onto your stomach. And we'll start with the palms together and place your face turning to the right. So your left cheek is on your palms. And slowly begin to bend both knees and bring your feet together. And if you want to spread out the knees a little bit, that's okay, wherever it feels most comfortable. And then slowly begin to start taking both feet to the left. And then back up. So just start off small. And the first thing I want you to notice is just being able to maintain control through the whole movement. And what I mean by that is not to let your feet just flop over where you have to catch them, but just maintaining a nice soft movement, trying to make the movement as smooth as you can. And as you lower the legs, the right foot will slide down the inside of the left leg and you come back up. And so you may notice that a lot of the rotation is happening in the hips. But you may notice, if you bring your attention and awareness into your pelvis, is that your pelvis starts to begin to move. So just begin to note which side of the hips begin to raise off the floor. How far up your spine you can begin to notice movement occurring. Can you feel the lumbar spine starting to rotate? And if you can feel that, can you feel coming up into the thoracic spine? And if you're having a hard time noticing your spine, you can slide one hand behind you and just get a sense. You can palpate. And for me, I can definitely feel some of the lumbar and thoracic spine starting to move with the movement of my legs. And then bring your hand back. Go ahead and rest your legs for a moment. And over a series of couple lifting and turning a little bit to the left and back to the right, slowly begin to start rotating your head to the left. And place your right cheek on your hands. Bend the knees again, feet touching. And this time slowly begin to start taking the legs to the right. And again, you're sliding this time the left foot down the inside of the right leg, and you're bringing it back. And here you can begin to notice how the weight not only moves your legs, but you can begin to pay attention to the surface that you're on, the floor, and how you move across the floor. How does the weight shift across your thighs? Notice which side of your pelvis begins to lift. And you can compare, how does it feel taking your legs to the right versus when we went to the left? And you can also begin to notice how much of your rib cage is involved with the movement. And as you bring your legs up, how do you bring your legs up? Do you purely just use the rotators in the hips? Is there a way that you might invite your spine, your hips, maybe even your rib cage into this movement to make it a little easier? And as your legs go down, which elbow presses into the floor? And as your legs come up, is there one elbow that you use more to bring your legs up and down? Good. Let that rest. Just take a moment to breathe. As you inhale, you can notice where your breath goes in your rib cage. And then go ahead and please bend the knees up again. And we'll start with the head facing left, but we'll begin to turn the head so that we begin to take it to the right. As we turn the head to the right, we'll take the legs to the left. And as we take the head to the left, we'll take the legs to the right. So now we're introducing this rotation through more and more of the spine. And you can again notice, how do you find the support to make the movement? And each time you make the movement, see if you can make it a little smoother and a little smoother. And one of the best markers to indicate the smoothness of the movement is your breath. Are there moments through the movement that you actually begin to hold your breath? Notice when you begin to inhale. At what point do you begin to exhale to make the movement? Excellent. So take a moment, let the legs come down. Turn your head to the left again. This time bend up the knees, bring the feet together. And this time we'll begin to take the feet to the left, the same direction that your head is facing. And back up. And you may notice that there's somewhat more of a restriction in the movement when your head is facing the same direction that your feet are moving. And you want to maintain the knees bent roughly about 90 degrees so that, again, the right foot is sliding down the inside of the left leg. And as you come back up, notice how might you invite your rib cage to help you bring your legs back up. All right. Go ahead and switch your head to the other side. And again, this time, taking the legs to the right and up. Great. Let that rest. All right. Go ahead and flip onto your back. When you arrive on your back, notice the contact with the floor now, and just see what may have shifted. So you may notice that there's a difference in which shoulder has more weight, or maybe there's just a slight difference in the weighting. Maybe it feels a little bit more balanced. You can bring your attention into your coccyx and tailbone, noticing whether or not there's a slight change in where you weight your pelvis. You can notice the arc of your low back now, either just palpating or tracing it in your mind. And then if you'd like, go ahead and turn your head to the right now and just notice where you comfortably roll to, where the first point of restriction is. And for me, I've noticed actually quite a bit more rotation in the neck, even though we didn't necessarily do that much with the neck. So it's always interesting finding these little benefits to the practice as a whole. So go ahead and come on up to standing. All right, well, I really hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Before we go, let's just revisit that reference movement and see how it's changed, what you might notice is different. So again, begin to turn to look to the right and to the left, as if you're looking over your shoulder. And for many of you, you'll notice that there's a profound sense of more integration up and through your spine. You may notice that there's more movement in your pelvis, and that oftentimes relates to more movement coming up and through your torso. And as you begin to turn, let's say as we begin to turn to the right, begin to lift the left heel. So you have this sense of lengthening from your left heel up and through your head. It's almost like you had a string attached coming from your heel all the way up through your head. And so you can get into this rotational lifting side to side. Hopefully many of you have noticed a pretty significant change in terms of the coordination, the ease of rotation coming up and through your spine. This concept of being able to move and have this rotation coming up and through your spine is integral to maintaining mobility, decreasing the wear and tear and the shearing forces across your low back. So before you leave, please drop a comment in the comment box. Tell me one thing that you learned from this video. What's one key takeaway that you're going to integrate into your movement tomorrow or the next day in terms of maybe how you're rotating, how you're finding a connection from the ground up and through you? Or maybe just a simple awareness piece like, I never knew that when I was lying on my back that my lumbar spine was off the floor. So it's in these pieces of awareness that we build more capacity to increase our efficiency in our movement, decrease the shearing forces, and make ourselves and our lives more enjoyable and comfortable. So I hope you liked the video today. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.